Okay, hi all. Welcome to my kitchen. Today is Sunday. It's the 20th of August. It is hot. It's 86 degrees already, and it's only 1:20, and it's supposed to get much hotter today. Now, you guys are going to notice I'm doing dueling cameras. The camcorder, you're viewing the iPhone, and the iPhone, you're actually seeing the camcorder. And I'm doing this for a reason. In case one of these don't record, you'll record on the other one. So, today we're going to do my great-grandmother's, actually, I think this is more my aunt's dumpling recipe. We're going to do the yeast dumplings. Now, before I get into the recipe and I show you guys this, and yes, this is my Aunt Vi's dumpling recipe. My great-grandmother and my grandmother didn't make yeast dumplings all that often. Now, my great-grandmother and my grandmother did make a version of a bread dumpling, but they were a lot heavier than the yeast dumplings that you would get if you go to a German restaurant, or you go to a Polish restaurant, or if you go to a Czechoslovakian restaurant. The yeast dumplings that they use are light and fluffy, and they are not that hard to make. They're a little bit tricky, and I'm going to show you guys step-by-step instructions on how to do the yeast dumplings. Now, the reason my family didn't do them is it does take quite a while to make the yeast dumplings. And that's just because you have to allow the dough to rise before you can form it into your dumpling recipe. Now, this is all done on the stovetop. There is no baking involved with the yeast dumplings. So, I'm going to show you on each camera, so bear with me if I'm not speaking or I have my back turned to you on the iPhone, or the vice versa. If I have my back turned to you, I'm showing the recipe on two phones so that it gets. So, I'm going to do the camcorder first, and hopefully you guys can see this. I'm going to try to put in as close as possible. And it might be a little bit fuzzy. I'm going to actually pull out and I'm going to zoom in because I have that new feature now. Oop. And hopefully you guys will be able to read this. Okay, I'm going to zoom back out. There we go. Now I'm going to turn my back to the camcorder. I'm going to face you, and I'm going to do the same thing, except I don't have a zoom feature on the iPhone. So that's the ingredients that you're going to need, or at least part of it. The rest of it's down where my finger is tapping right here. So I'm going to tell each of you guys what you guys are going to need. This is for the sponge part of the yeast dumplings, and you're going to need 1/4 cup of warm milk. And when I say warm, you do not want scalding hot milk. You want warm milk. If you go back to the Hoska video, or even the donut video, and that's probably 4 months of videos you'd have to go through, and I don't know if they were time-stamped Hoska by that time, because I wasn't in parentheses actually putting what was being cooked. But you'd have to go back to those videos to understand what I'm talking about. So, you need 1/4 cup of warm milk. You need 1 package of dry yeast, or 1 tablespoon. Now, you can use fresh yeast, which I'm going to do. If you're using the fresh yeast, you're going to need more fresh yeast. Every time that you use fresh yeast in whatever you're baking or cooking or making, you're going to have to add about 1/4 more of the fresh yeast to do what it needs to do versus the dry yeast. You're going to need half a teaspoon of sugar and 2 tablespoons of flour. Now you're going to mix it in a cup and let it rise to the top of the cup, keeping the cup covered, and it takes about a ½ an hour. So if you saw the videos where I had it on the back of the stove, that's pretty much the same thing that you're going to do with this, except you're going to make it a sponge, which is why you're going to need to cover it. And when when it says cover, I would cover it with plastic wrap and not like aluminum foil, and you don't want to put a towel over it. You want to cover it. So now the rest of the recipe calls for 4 cups of unbleached flour, 1 1/4 cup of warm milk, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 1 egg beaten. And we'll get into the recipe as we do this. Now, there are a lot of yeast dumpling videos out there in YouTube land, and you can Google. When you Google yeast dumplings, you're going to pick up a lot of Polish, a lot of German, and a lot of Czech recipes. Most of those videos that have been filmed were not filmed in the United States. They were filmed in Europe, because dumplings in Europe, in the Czechoslovakian region, the German region, the Polish region, so Poland, Germany, Czechoslovakia, and there's a word for it, and I can't think of when you put all of those countries together, there's a word, a particular word that's used, but all of the Bavarian countries use dumplings in some sort of dish. Usually they're used for duck, they're used for pork, they're used for anything that's in a rich gravy sauce, like the chicken and paprikash, the goulashes, the skvichkova, all use the dumplings. Now, there are different versions depending on which region in Europe you live. In Germany, they make more of the potato dumplings. In Czechoslovakia, it's more the bread and yeast dumplings. In Poland, it's more the bread and yeast dumplings, although they have another version of dumplings that they use in Poland. So, all of the European videos that I've ever come across use Wanda flour. And Wanda flour is usually found in a can. I unfortunately don't have any in the house, so I can't show you. It's not a cheap flour. It's more expensive flour, and it's a very, very fine flour. Now, can you do this recipe here in the United States using all-purpose flour? Well, apparently you can, because the recipe's written that way. If you want to give your dumplings a little bit of an extra oomph, you can use the bread flour. But you want to be careful when you use bread flour that you don't get the active rise bread flour. So I use the all-purpose bread flour. Well, it's not all-purpose. I use the bread flour by King Arthur. It's more expensive than any other bread flour there is, but it's a fine bread flour that'll give your dumplings more of a light taste. So we're going to get started with that in a few minutes. I got to get everything going. I did change a few things for tonight. I was able to run before my Italian market closes, because it closes at 2 o'clock on Sundays. I did pick up some Italian sausage. This time tonight we're going to do it on the grill. We're not doing it in the oven. And I'm not going to do it with the green peppers or the onions today. We're just going to have Italian sausage and sweet corn and probably nothing else tonight. I was thinking, well, maybe I should make a potato salad, but I don't want to do all that work today with as hot as it is. And with the beef brisket that's coming up, you could serve potato salad, but I find the beef brisket is much, much better with mashed potatoes than it is with potato salad. Although you certainly can do the beef brisket with potato salad, and we'll get into that when I'm focused on the brisket. So I'm going to stop each camera, and I'll be right back. I'm going to get set up, and we'll get right into this recipe. Okay, I'm back. I've measured out my water. I'm just getting the rest of my ingredients together. I've got the warm milk on the side here, and you won't be able to see it from the iPhone version unless I pull you guys way back, and you're still not going to be able to see it. But you will see it on the camcorder, and I'm going to angle you a little bit more. I'm going to try to get you guys angled so you can see this on the iPhone, and you'll be able to see the top of it. I'm going to try to place it in an area where it's more visible. Let's see, you can see it, and you guys can see it. Okay, good. So, with this, and this is warm, and again, you want to be able to put your finger in it. You do not want it hot. If you put your finger in it and you have to pull your finger right out, it's too hot for the yeast to survive. So you definitely want to let it sit a little bit longer. Now, this version of the recipe uses an unbleached flour, and it probably uses an all-purpose unbleached flour. I'm using the King Arthur unbleached bread flour because this is going to make it a little bit different. I'm going to play with this recipe. This is the second time I've made this recipe in my life. Like I said, I didn't grow up with the yeast dumplings in the family. I grew up with the bread dumplings that there's a video of that my grandmother always made whenever I came over or was ever with her. And those are the dumplings that I usually make all the time. These are going to be different. So I've got my warm milk. I'm going to get my yeast. I'm going to step off camera. You might see me on the iPhone. You won't see me on the camcorder. But I'm going to get my yeast. Okay, and I got my yeast. I'm going to show you on the camcorder. I'm going to show you on the phone. Now what we're going to do with the yeast is we're going to split this in half. And this is a 2-ounce package of yeast. I'm going to show you guys 2 ounces. 2 ounces. You won't be able to see it, but take my word for it. It's 2 ounces. What you're going to basically do with this recipe is split it in half. Now, I'm doubling this recipe, and the reason I'm doubling this recipe is because I have cooks that are planned for next month that will utilize these dumplings if they come out good. So I'm just going to get my yeast. And you always want to check the date on your yeast. And with the fresh yeast, my store has been having a heck of a time getting it in. And it just takes them a very, very, very long time to get them in. So I bought 4 of them this time just to have them. But they do expire, and they can go a little past their expiration date, but they cannot go too far past their expiration date, because if you go too far past their expiration date, fresh yeast has a habit of dying relatively quick. So I'm going to grab a spoon, and okay, I did the warm milk. Now we need to add a teaspoon of sugar. And I'm going to add a full teaspoon because, like I said, I'm doubling the recipe. And 2 tablespoons of flour. So, what I'm going to do, unfortunately the other day, you're seeing this more on that, I'll try to do this universal so you can see on both cameras. I accidentally knocked the bread flour onto the floor, and it when it bounced, it opened the bag. So bear with me. Well, I'm just going to go like this. There's 1, and there's 2. And you're just going to mix this together. Now, I'm going to put this in a proofer. In my toaster oven has the proof setting. I'm just going to let it proof a little bit in there. But what you want to do is I'm going to move this up so you can see this on the iPhone. You guys are seeing this on the camcorder. You just want to mix it. And this is what's going to make your sponge. And I think that's good. Again, no aluminum foil. I'll be right back. I'm just going to grab my cling wrap. And I'm going to start the toaster oven on the proof. And proofing is at 85 degrees, so let me step in. It's 85 degrees, and it just kind of proofs. Perfect. I'm going to put that down for a second, because I think what I need to do is use a fork to beat this smooth. So, pardon me if you guys are not seeing me. You guys are so used to my videos not being professional, like I said. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to give this a little bit beat. And you want to be careful if you are using plastic wrap in a proofer that it doesn't melt. Now, does this have to be covered? It says yes, but I don't know if necessarily it should be covered, but I'm just going to place this over. Keep an eye on this if you're going to do it in a proofer so that the plastic is not melting into the thing and that you're not starting a fire. So I'm just going to set this in. Bake cookies. Well, slow cook. Okay, I'm just going to set this in my thing, and I'm going to turn it off of the convection because you don't need it. Really. You really don't need to proof it all that long. And again, like I said, if you're going to do this in a proofing machine, if your toaster ovens have a proof setting, make sure you stay in the kitchen because you do not want to start a fire with the plastic wrap, especially if you cover it. I just loosely have it covered on top, and it should proof fairly nicely in there, and we'll see how this goes. In the meantime, I'm going to cover my fresh yeast, and I'm going to put that back in the refrigerator. And the yeast that you don't use, if it's fresh, you just want to recover it and put it back in the refrigerator and use it for something else. Like I said, for you guys that are brand new to my channel, first off, let me welcome you guys. For my old timers that have been here for quite a while, you know how I get sometimes I'll go into something totally different than what I'm actually doing. But in the video I posted Sunday, I did talk about the fact that I'm kind of excited that the Italian prune plums are coming into season. And hopefully later on this week, my grocer will get them in, which means that sometime next week I'll be able to make the prune coffee cake, and I'm going to show you that. Now, you are going to want yeast for that, because that is the yeast spread that you will be baking in the oven. Now, I don't suggest doing it when it's 100 degrees outside, which is why I'm thankful it's not that my grocery store may not get it this week. It may get it early next week, but I'm not going to do it this week. I will do it next week, and we'll get into that when I do it. So I'll be right back. I'm going to step away from the camcorder. You on the iPhone will be able to see this because you're facing where my door is. And don't worry, when I start to really do this with the camcorder, if I'm posting the video on the camcorder, or I'm posting the video on the iPhone, I have the ability to raise up the camcorder so you guys will be able to see this. Now, this recipe does not use a mix master. You do this totally by hand mixing, so it is a little bit more tedious when you do it. So, I'm going to stop the videos for a minute, and I'll pick this up in probably about 20 minutes. I'm going to watch my yeast to proof, because you want to make sure that the yeast starts to proof before you start mixing all of the ingredients. So I'll be right back.